So it's a dozen eyes, and the dozen eyes has a volume of 6. It's the 4 quanta of the 8 eyes plus 2, which is 6. And again, this is folded right now. If I do actually unfold it, which isn't that hard, here, you see how big it grows in no time at all. This is actually, like the other one, the 8 eyes is big enough to wrap around my head if I hadn't had my hair in a knot. But this one most certainly is big enough for my head to fit in and have plenty of room. So this one, indeed, if this is my quantum volume 1, and this is a quantum volume of 4, and the thing on my head now is a quantum volume of 1,006 and a half, and some golden ratio rest. That's wild. That's truly remarkable. Specifically if we consider that this one was already more than the box, while taking up less material and time and effort and so forth. And to make this construct cube, we need altogether 1,006 straws, having cut a dozen of them short. 1,006, so this is only a dozen more straws, but the volume of it is not just 3 quanta, it's 1,006 quanta. So for anyone who isn't as familiar with dozenal numbers yet, 1,006, that's 18. So the volume of this, relative to this, is 18.52 and some. 18. That's 18 times the volume of this, by only having 5 times the structural members in place. You see where this is taking us, right? Because for so long, our civilization has been created from the building block of reality, the building blocks of life, cutting short and cutting apart everyone in the process. And if this is the building block of our civilization, it's the shape of human nature, as they call it, then it's no wonder people suffer in an earthquake, because this has no structural integrity. And if this is only an afterthought put in, then this is not capable of resilience. You know, it's not capable of being moved around by the earthquake without collapse, catastrophic collapse. Now, I don't say we need to live in this as a house. Indeed, that wouldn't be so far off, because it's the basis. This is the beginning of where the native people of Turtle Island had been living in teepees. They began with a tripod and then put another dozen straws, or in their case branches, in between to open up the ground to become a circle, which has a lot more room than this. But this is essentially the basis of like a geodesic dome, like the simple-most geodesic dome would be the teepee. This, on the other hand, is the basis for what today we call the geodesic dome, which is probably the most prominent part of Bucky's legacy in the world. He's been infamously called the dome guy. And this would be, you know, they cut off one of the corners here to put it flat on the ground, and then have that as the basis for a membrane to hold a volume of air and be a greenhouse or whatever. But they make this a house, where my personal sense is all 3 of these, as I showed you with the Dance of the Tao, are actually members of the same transformation. And they are all intertransformable. We can change one into the other. We don't have to be fixed in one. And essentially, this is also showing us that we have a spectrum of choice when it comes to shape, because we have not just one, not just a uniform that is the same for any given occasion, but we do have 3 at least, at minimum, to choose from. And this one gives us the smallest volume with the largest surface, which isn't necessarily ideal for a house, because keeping the body temperature in check of a house is a function of the surface ratio to the volume, the ratio of the surface to the volume. And this has not the ideal ratio in that case. This is better for a fireplace. If you make your fireplace like this, where the point is to the ground and the eye is to the sky, then this takes up all the fuel and turns it into fire and charcoal, biochar, that we can then activate and put into the compost and reintegrate in the ground to make happy soil, terra preta, black soil. Very, 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 very important if we want to turn this climate change into something positive again. So that's where this may be useful. I wouldn't use it for creating my house per se. I would probably make my house this shape if I could. Again, this is more room than in a box, and it's stable. It's no worry if the ground is shaking or whatever. I could put it on 3 legs and stand it up. I could have it hang off of a tree or whatever. And if I really wanted to be fancy, or I had enough, if I had enough resources, I suppose, I would probably go somewhere like this. So I would grow a house inside of that membrane, where the membrane around it has the most volume with the least surface, being ideal for controlling the climate within. Now the 8 eyes in that is a brilliant place to begin housing with, because it allows for a beautiful kind of fractal subdivision, so to speak, which you get a hint of from this structure here. And this is an example of a more complex configuration that I've been creating. I have grown by now dozens and dozens and dozens of these. One could say hundreds, I suppose, but it's more like lots and lots of grows of these. And any one of these can be as much a toy as a useful object, as a architectural model, if you need it to be. But it also shows how all of this space-time structuring is actually a fractal. And with that, you know what? I am going to show you one last thing with this, because I said that this was also able to show us another thing along the way, which I hadn't shown going into this direction. But let's go back there and take out these 6 additional straws. So we return to our dance form, to the membrane of the vector equilibrium, 2 dozen 8 eyes. So 2 dozen 8, 24 and 8, that's 32, I think. 32 eyes. Okay, here's the membrane, the dance of the Tao. Oops. There. That one. Now I'll do something with this, where I take one of its quadrilateral openings and I twist the members around that, like so, and I go on the opposite side and take the members there and go in with, this is at the right angle, these two, and with that I'll twist these. Okay, and it's not yet a structure as per se, because it's not omnitriangulated, but we can change that. I'll add 4 of our little additional fingers in here. 1, 2, and these go around in a circle that is, in this case, square-shaped. But it is only possible to be an apparent square by the virtue of all the triangles present. The triangles are the structure. The square is just something the triangles do. But now we see here the 2 frequency 4 eyes. So this is a 1 frequency 4 eyes, that's 4 spheres. And this is 2 frequency 4 eyes, so it's actually 10 spheres. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 spheres. And the quantum volume of it is 8, because we have 1 8 eyes with a volume of 4, and an additional 4 tiny 4 eyes around it. And 4 is 8, right? But what this shows is that space-time, spherical space-time, as it is, you know, present everywhere around us, including the tree behind me and the tree ship over there that I'm not showing you right now. But it's another example of what we can take this into. It is this the nature, so to speak, of this structure of space-time is that it is polyform, not uniform, but polyform, which is already evident with the triangle itself, because if you unfold a single triangle in 2 directions, it's pointing 2 ways. And the same kind of polyformity is also ever present once we get into higher complexities of these systems. And the whole thing is fractal, so if one understands the basis of it, one understands most of it already, like the whole. The basis of it is to understand the whole. And that is the whole of universe. It's the whole of everything that is real, not just abstract. Because nothing about synergetics is actually abstract. Yeah, and the nature of all of this is diversity. It's polyformity. It's the complementarity of one and the other. And just as if I do take 4 spheres and place them together, between them they have a gap. They have a little room within them. The same way I take 4 of these 4 eyes and put them around together like those 4 spheres, and they have a gap between them, which is the 8 eyes. And what we see there is that the universe loves to complement one another, and we see that in ourselves too, because my true identity, my true self, is not just what is within me. It's most definitely not just my thinking side, because that's one sense among many. But my true self is my body. I don't have a body, I am a body. And my body is myself. But it is also defined by a skin, which is my membrane, which binds my 2 sides of myself together. And we call one side of that self, which is my inside. We call the other side of that self, other, outer. That's my other side, and that's the rest of universe. So truly to understand synergetics is to integrate everything and see that it all together is one, which is universe, which is not simultaneous at all. It's Bucky said universe is oh god, it's such a long phrase, but basically paraphrasing here, universe is a scenario of partially overlapping inter-accommodative and intertriangulated happenings, systems, structures that are non-simultaneously altogether one. Partially overlapping is, like me and my great-grandmother. We partially overlapped in our lifetimes. When I was little, she was old. And as she passed, I moved on. And in that way, everyone we meet is another one of these systems of universe, another one of these bodies that in that moment when we do meet, partially overlap with us. At least our trajectories overlap, and they do not intersect. That's another thing about synergetics. There's no intersection here. Those two lines cannot go through the same place. They have to weave, go over one another or under one another, around one another, in closest proximity. Alright, and all of that is to say, to give you a sense of what it is that we're talking about here. And it's the implications are endless, because this is a frame of mind. It's something that we can apply to any craft, any science, any project, any process, anything, any aspect of our life can be comprehensively considered in this frame of mind, in this framework. And I've given you some of the basis today, just as an example. There's a lot of work on this already. Buckminster Fuller had his life work on this. He called it the theory of the spheres in the beginning and synergetics in the end. I called it synergetics in the beginning and the way of the spheres by now. It's the same thing, it's just taken another step because I've been integrating it with Taoism, with animism, with this growing sense of relationship that we share among our human kin, but also all kin, all kingdoms of life, all kinship earth, recognizing that we're one organism in the vastness of universe. And this whole thing, Synergetics by Bucky, has been laid out in 2 large volumes, 2 big books. One can find them on the web as Synergetics. There's another great resource by Amy Edmondson, A Fuller Explanation, which is a condensed introduction into Synergetics. And beyond that, there is the Buckminster Fuller Institute Design Science Studio. There is Fuller Feedback Systems. There's Kirby Erner. There's Scientific Genius on YouTube. Ari Friedman. Daniel Ari Friedman. There is the 52 living ideas who have been deep diving into Synergetics and both Bucky's world and Bucky's legacy in this whole year now, doing hundreds of meetups on the topic, bringing together various people who have been living their lives in accordance with these principles and patterns. And again, there's much more. There's so much more. And it's not something that you generally find. Like, it's not something you will probably run across just somewhere, because if you do, you find perhaps a geodesic dome somewhere. You find, like in Montreal, they have the geodome from Expo 67, which is one of the most iconic architectural legacies of Bucky Fuller. But that is one example to do it. It's not the only way to do it. And my personal game, my personal play is to both reanimate geometry and to rewild it too, because we do not have, indeed, to have these structures look like mass-produced, manufactured like space age kind of things, when we can just as well have them be the most organic and natural and not low tech, deep tech, the most deep tech that we could create. That's where I am at. That's what I'm playing with. And all of this, again, is just an invitation for us to come into conversation, to come into consideration and constellation and conspire, breathe together this new breath of air that is mindful of our being one with universe, in the presence, in the flesh of kinship earth. And that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you do get in touch. I hope we continue our conversations on these topics and matters. and I hope to see you soon. So peace be with you, peace be with one and all. Peace.